Solving of quadratic equations, solving of equations that are in quadratic form. Right, now when you treat quadratic equations, unlike the linear equations, in linear equations, if you remember, you want to get all of the x's on one side and all of the numbers on the other side. If I see, oh, this is a quadratic equation, what I want to do is get everything on one side, and so that I only have 0 on the other side. Everything on one side, 0 on the other side. And then this everything I will factorize. Now if I factorize, I will have a product that is equal to 0. So this everything I'm going to factorize. Doesn't matter what quadratic equation is standing there, I factorize that using any of the factorizing methods that we've discussed. And after I factorized, I have something, a product that's equal to 0, and then I'm going to use the 0 factor law. Now the 0 factor law states that if I have two things multiplied with one another, say for instance a times b, that gives me 0, one of these things must be 0. So if you can think that that should be true. If I have, say for instance, 3 times something, that something must be 0 to be able to have a 0 answer. So then this, if I have a product equal to 0, that means a must be 0 or b must be 0 or both must be 0, but one of them is at least 0. And this applies also when you have more than one thing. Say for instance I have a times b times c equals to 0, then if I have 3 things multiplied with one another and it gives me 0, I know that a must be 0 or b must be 0 or c must be 0, but one of these things must be 0. And this is the 0 factor law. Now quickly look here, I wrote a times b here now, but can you see that I can look at this bracket as a and this bracket as b? So if this times this gives me 0, one of these brackets must be 0, and that I can use to go and solve now the equation so that I find values for x that is valid answers to the equation. Sometimes when you have everything on one side and 0 on the other side, you try to factorize, you will see I cannot factorize, and then there's something else I can do, but I'm still going to, when I have a quadratic equation, get everything to one side, 0 on the other. Then I want to factorize, but if I see I can't factorize this by any of the means that I know, or if I see that this fact, I can probably factorize it, but it's going to take me like half an hour to factorize this equation. There's a formula you can use, and we're all going to look at it later, where this comes from and how it's proved and everything. We're coming to that with the completion of a full square. We're coming to that, but there is a formula for solving quadratic equations, specifically for solving quadratic equations, and that is if I have my quadratic equation in the form ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0, then the value of x is equal to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Okay, and this plus minus means I'm going to take first on my calculator, if I have now values added in here, first on my calculator I'm going to take minus b plus the root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So I type everything. Say for instance I have now x is equal to minus 2 plus or minus the root of 4, because minus 2 squared is 4, minus 4 times 1 times negative 2, say for instance, over 2 times a. If I have this, I'm going to type in my calculator first minus 2 plus root of 4 minus 4 bracket 1 bracket, type it in exactly like this but with a plus, over 2 times 1, and that gives me my first answer. And then I write OR, and then I type in my calculator minus 2 minus, I type this in over, I type this in, and I get another value for x. And that is what this plus minus means. You're not going to put a plus minus in your calculator. You first put plus, work out the first one, then you put minus and you work out the second value, because quadratic equations for the most part has 2 answers. Alright, so let us quickly look at a few problems now. I'm just going to write this again here so that we have it in sight. I want to get everything at 0, both sides. So say for instance I have 2x plus 5. In mathematics there's 2 important things. You need to first know your rules, and then the second thing is you need to be able to use your rules in problems. That's why I will always first go through sort of what you need to know, because there are stuff you need to know, and then just show you the stuff that you now know, how are you going to use it in a problem. So quickly look at this. Now I know in quadratic equations I want everything on one side 0, on the other side. This is not a quadratic equation, by the way, it's cubic, because there's a square and there's a x, and can you see if I multiply it out, I'm going to have a cube value. But they've already started factorizing this for me, so I don't need to be able to do anything with it. I can just literally say this should be 0 or this should be 0. But can you see that this looks like a difference of squares, but the 2 is not a square number. So you can force this difference of squares rules a little bit here. The difference of square rule you can force a little bit here by feeding in there x minus root 2, x plus root 2 is equal to 0. And then I'm going to say, you see I have 3 things multiplied with one another that gives me 0. So I use the 0 factor law that 2x plus 5 must be 0, or x minus root 2 must be 0, or x plus root 2 must be 0. And then I will have 3 answers. 2x is equal to negative 5. I take that over because this is a little linear equation. And x is equal to negative 5 over 2. Or x is equal to positive root 2, or x is equal to negative root 2. And this you can write as one term, exactly like with the formula that I did the plus minus before the root, which is a either or situation. You can actually write this as x is equal to minus 5 over 2, which is minus 2.5, or x is equal to plus or minus root 2. And now depending on the question, you can either leave this as a root form, or if they say give your answer to 2 decimals, then you're going to just feed that into your calculator and leave the answer as a decimal. Let me just show you, if you have one of these Casio calculators, if I feed in root 2 and I press equal, it gives me root 2, which is not very helpful. If I want a decimal, I press this S to D button there, which changes it between standard form and decimal form. And root 2 is a standard form, and if I press that button, it changes it to decimal form. which is 1 point, and you can round off to 2 decimals, so 1.41. And if you keep pressing that button, see what will happen. It will change back and forth between standard form and decimal form, and standard form and decimal form. So you can easily, if you have something, change it back and forth and back and forth between standard and decimal form. Okay, so let's look at another example. This one was just now a funny type of question that they can ask you, where we want to start multiplying this out and then factorizing, and then we're creating a lot of problems for ourselves. Just notice if they give something like this, that they've already started factorizing, and keep in mind, I want to factorize this, everything that I have here. So if they've already started that for me, don't go make life difficult for yourself by starting to multiply out something that's already been factorized. And then let's look at another example. Say now I have, for instance, this is now true quadratic equation. Say for instance I have x squared minus 4 is equal to 5. I'm going to take everything to one side, so I have x squared minus 9, and then 0 on the other side, minus 4 minus 5. And then this I'm going to factorize. This is difference of squares. And can you see that now I have a product, zero factor law. This should be 0. This is 0 where x is 3. Or this should be 0. This is 0 where x is minus 3. Say for instance I have something like this. 2x plus 1 to the power of 2 is equal to 9. I'm just now, although it feels like they've already written a product here, can you see that there's now a number? So now I'm not going to do what I did with number 1 and immediately just start writing answers. I am going to have to multiply this out. So I'm going to multiply x plus 1 by itself. And notice the difference between a bracket squared I multiplied by itself and the difference of squares where the signs are different. Can you see this is factorizing difference of squares, then the signs are different. When I square, the signs are the same, and I'm somehow going to take over that 9 so that I have 0 on the other side. And if I simplify this a little bit, I'm simply first going to multiply out these brackets. So I have x squared plus x plus x. If you first go write an extra step where you write them separately, that's fine as well, but if you can do that straight, that's excellent. And 1 times 1 is 1. Minus 9 is equal to 0. And now I just want to multiply this in because I need to include this 9 in the whole equation before I start factorizing. And this 9 is now like a lonesome poor outsider or a little outcast, and I need to make it part of the equation. So I'm just going to mix this up a bit so that I can make the minus 9 part of the group so that it doesn't feel all left out. So I multiply this 2 in, and now I can you see I can make the 9 part of the group. There is found a friend. So I have 2x squared plus 4x, and then 2 minus 9 is minus 7. And now you can do the advanced trinomials here. But here is now a perfect example. I can go start doing the advanced examples, advanced trinomials here, but I don't really have a guarantee that it will work or that it will have a pair of answers. There is actually not a pair of answers that will work for this. So I'm going to go straight to the formula. Minus b plus or minus root of b squared minus 4ac. And I think not for all grade 11s, but I think for the matrics they do give this in the final in the paper in the equations that the formula sheet, they do give this to you in the formula sheet, I think. It might be worth just checking, but I think they give this formula to you. But if you know it by heart, so much better for yourself. Right, so I'm going to do this. If you're not comfortable with substitution into a complicated procedure like this, I suggest you just go and write for yourself. A is equal to 2, B is equal to 4, C is equal to -7, and note I write the sign with the value for C, also for B and A, but those are now both positive. And then I'm going to substitute into that formula. So I have minus B, which is 4, plus or minus the square root of B squared is 16, minus 4A is 2, C is 7, minus 7, over 2A, and 2A is 2, so 2 times 2. Right. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can read there properly. And then what I want to do is just feed that into my calculator, first with a plus and then with a minus. So I have minus, I'm first going to, on this calculator, first going to put the fraction, because if I don't, quickly see what happens. I press -4 plus first, and then I put the square root of 16 minus 4 bracket 2 bracket close bracket. You see I fill this in my calculator exactly like that. Now I want to put this over, and if I put the over there, it puts it in front, so that's not gonna work. If I put the over there, it just puts the, can you see, the -4 is not on the fraction. So I usually start off by first putting the fraction, and then putting -4 plus that root over. I just move with my bracket, and then at the bottom I have 2 times 2, so I just put 2 brackets 2, and then if I put this in my calculator, it gives me this, which I don't want to give as an answer, so I just put the decimal form. It's 1.12. please never write this as your answer. Go to the decimal form, 1.12. So I have 1.12, or, and now I don't need to rewrite the whole thing in my calculator. I can just use my arrow keys and go to just after the plus, and then I delete that plus and I put in a minus there, and then I get that, which I also don't want to write. It gives me -3.12. so I write x is equal to -3.12, like that. Alright, okay. Alright, so that is a nice problem using the